to change school. But what about those younger ones or whatever? I just wanted to just kind of know, because again, that's 200 students pretty much that we're missing out on that,
Right, and we can supply a report to let you know like where are they going. Some are enrolling into McFarland, which is an all virtual, school district, and they have been doing that for years. There are a number, if kids were in Milwaukee Public Schools and then they moved to Brown Deer, they may be open enrolling out just to finish up their, their school year. So I can give you breakdowns. I don't have it tonight, but I will certainly have breakdowns and update the budget report, because I do have in there that open enrollment out by grade level, and I'll be able to show you where those kids are. And that may tell a story too. And I can certainly let you know the percentages that are attending.
It's like $1 million right there.
I just want us to be mindful of, and so you're right in the comment around the dollars associated with it. We have to be mindful of our facilities. So we have to have somewhere to place this.
See, but that was the whole purpose when we did the referendum or whatever have you. I'm positive that when we did all of that and we built all these other additional classrooms and we did all of this different stuff, it was to be able to hold our students.
For the number at the time.
Right, and so, but we don't have any open enrollment and all the rest of that different stuff. So I thought that when we did everything and we planned everything, we planned it to be able to be able to have enough space to be able to hold all of our kids or whatever. So I thought that was the thing, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, unless I looked at it wrong or everything was kind of
How would we have known that then?
known what.
It was for the
The
number
number
of
was
students
gonna
at
be.
the time that the referendum was in.
Right, but the number for the referendum at that time was, we still were at like 16, we were still at 1,600 and change, even with the open and roll out.
I don't know what the number. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, no, even our numbers haven't fluctuated that drastically to where we wouldn't know about how many students we'd be looking at. But again, that's a moot point right now. I just want to make sure that in the future, for these students that we are missing, let's put something in place to be able to contact those families to be like, hey, is there a reason why you're not coming? And if so, maybe they've never even come, they moved in, they never came, so.
I just have a question regarding, open enrollment, because I think the open enrollment period begins in like February. Isn't there a window?
Yeah.
Where,
Yes.
they submit their free choice school selections? And I'm wondering, okay, from the time that a family or student applies for open enrollment and the time they get that decision, which is usually probably before the opening of school. I know you had alluded to the fact that you were gonna try to track where those students are. I'd be interested in knowing, where those students are going.
Yeah, we know which students are open and rolling out, and we know what their resident district is, or I'm sorry, we know what their non-resident district is. We're obviously the resident district in that case. So we can list that. One of the things that I've learned from our registrar is that where we do what's known as the alternative additional year tuition waiver, when a student leaves toward the end of a school year or something, sometimes they can stay under the tuition waiver rules, which the funding remains the same like open enrollment. MPS doesn't do alternative tuition waivers, so they basically allow students to enroll under there's an alternative application period, which is basically year round. If you have the right justification, a school district can take open enrollment students at any point in the year, and then those who want to boost their their counts will do that. And so that's a lot of where these numbers, you see a huge number of MPS students are on the list. And that's one reason why we sometimes get the data late, because they haven't gone through the normal process of that February to April window. And then, usually in the summers when you approve which district you're going to, you make that decision. So some of that information comes late because they're using that alternative window.
And then my second question is, it has to do with a capping of enrollment students. Is there such a thing where you can kind of cap out the number of students, or is it purely a family's choice, a student's choice to elect to participate in the open enrollment program?
Yeah, there's no cap. Because again, for us, there is a net. It's still a net gain to some extent because our cost per pupil is more than what we would send to another district. What gets challenging again is when we can't count those kids for revenue purposes, but they still are on the expense side. So that's where we have that little bit of a disconnect. But But there is no cap. I mean, if you're a resident of a particular school district, you can open enroll to any district that will take you. If they want.
Okay.
I'd like
Stacey, you got a question?
to know, it sounds like you're gonna determine where they went and put that in, but I think that the why, if we're talking about outreach, it's more important why they left, and then we let them know why they can come back. And then just when you were talking about the referendum, we didn't like do an evaluation as to like how they extrapolate numbers when we did the referendum of how many students, next 10 years brought in.
Overthinking,
Yeah.
forecasting, not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
We hadn't done a study. I mean, studies are,
yeah, that's what I was.
my
wondering.
experience with studies have been.
And I know.
Right.
And that was actually before the other apartment buildings even were
Right,
approved and everything else like that and stuff. And hence the reason why we had a little bit of an issue with the village by not letting us know that this is what was getting ready to go on and for us to be able to plan ahead just in case, because one of the fears that we did have at that time after it was built, like, whoa, what if we end up with 100 kids coming out of it that we hadn't even thought about? And that was hence the reason why now we have that village and school district bi-monthly meeting to just ensure that, we all are in the know of everything.
the rezoning of that
Yeah.
one to allow children. Also, you said non-sped, if you have a sped.
Oh, yeah, the spend amount was, it's about $13,000. If they're doing there's a flat rate, or if they decide to file for actual costs for services, if they're higher than that, they can
And
submit the
then the
DPI, then
number
we
of
would pay a
those-
higher amount.
And the number of those students were.
I don't have the breakdown, but I can provide that as part of that.
Yeah, he said he's gonna get us to all of that stuff when he.
I mean, at this point, we're focused on just the overall number because we knew that's.
Right, no, I didn't.
I will just say this, just so you do know, about, I'm gonna guess 7 or 8 years ago, when I was sitting where you were, we did try this, where the board tried to reach out to families who were open and rolling out. And it was very challenging to get any kind of response from people. It's like, we were making phone calls and reaching out to say, like, could you tell us why? And so we had some people we made contact with, but a lot of people either just didn't want to respond or never picked the phone or whatever. So it might be helpful, but it's also challenging to get into that group to be able to say, why haven't you reconsidered the.
I guess my biggest thing
We
is,
can look at.
I guess my biggest thing is for new families that may be moving into the district that don't even know. Well, I mean, of course, they know about the school district, but haven't been in our facilities or whatever. And then the kids are still like, well, I just want to go back to where I was at without even coming in and seeing our facilities and everything else, because they may see them and be like, ooh, this is where I want to go. So.
But one of my projects is to look back at the previous, to see who is a new open enrollment student. And who, maybe we have folks that have been open enrolling for 10 years, that's not gonna change probably, but there might be some that have moved recently. And then again, you look at, are they 11th and 12th graders? Well, then it's probably not gonna happen, so we can look at some of that just to see what kind of data we could.
Thanks, Kev. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And whenever you can get us that info, that'll be good. And then we can all sit down and kind of come up with some type of strategy just to make sure to see if there is something that we can do, potentially contact these families. If we get something back from them, fine. If we don't, at least we can turn around and tell the community that we tried, just to see, we wanted to be able to do that. And, squash some fears and everything else like that. So.
Maybe one thing that we could do with the concern that you just mentioned with the new people coming in is I know that they're doing like a welcome committee for the village.
Wanda's headed that up.
Yeah, just adding some information to whatever they distribute, encouraging folks to
Right.
check out the schools.
Yeah. Matter of fact, don't we have a village and what the meeting is the next week?
The 19th.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe that might be something we ask about or whatever, maybe something we can put together. But then, however, President Montgomery does that or whatever, maybe that might be something we can put into a packet for them, stuff, let them know about the district and the great things that we do and being able to, if they want to, give a call to set up a tour, they want to be able to do that. And then we just kind of go from there. All right, sounds good. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mr. Clement.
Oh, no problem. So to finish this conversation about the membership count, so we have that number of 1744, which is this year's number. And then if you recall, we do a 3-year rolling average for that. Now, we still have the oldest year is the COVID year where we had
19?
under 1,500. Yeah, the 1920 year was 1,500 students, basically. We had a really low FTE. So So that's what kind of dragged our average down a little bit, but we are at 1,696 in the 3-year average, which is 2 more than what I had put in the preliminary budget. So we're basically right kind of where we were expecting. We were trying to be a little cautious on that. Now, next year, even if we stay the same, we'll see a huge increase because that bad year is going to fall off. So we have 3 years that'll be consistent.
So will that actually just go straight to in the fund 10 or whatever
So
stuff?
that would allow us to raise, we'd be able to raise revenue, whether that's taxes or whether it's equalization aid, depends on what the budget looks like next year from the state. But certainly our membership count, that average will be considerably higher. We'll be well into the 1,700 next year.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
So I get the final information from the state on Friday, including the voucher numbers, because that's the other piece that will affect the levy as to how much we have to tax to cover whatever the voucher numbers are. And again, those we never know. Whereas open enrollment, I can tell you where the kids are and where they're going. Vouchers, I have no idea. I just get a number from the state and here's the bill. So. Real briefly, then a few other items, just so you know, again, in a couple of weeks, I'll have to ask the board to approve the line of credit with BMO Harris instead of our short-term borrow. So we will, especially now where interest costs are flying high. I'm glad that I'm not trying to commit to a year's worth of borrowing for that cost. So we will have, I'll have that paperwork ready for you in a couple of weeks so that we can approve that. And we may not use it, but again, I want to make sure we have access to it in case there's some issue with that. I did provide you and the board with an update on the COVID tracker. It's the last page of the update. At the annual meeting, I was able to fill in all the data as to what it looked like. So I just kind of completed that plan on the COVID tracker for ESSER 2. We did spend all of ESSER 2 last year, which came to $861,000. And now we'll be working on the budget for ESSER 3, which will be a portion of, we'll use a portion of it, probably half or thereabouts to help fund this year. I don't know if you have any questions about the COVID funding. Again, I brought it up during the annual meeting. You hadn't seen anything since then in case you had any particular comments or questions. I just want to be transparent to the community so they know how we are spending those dollars. And then finally, I think we had talked about this as well, but the Department of Justice of the state of Wisconsin is offering grants to school districts in an effort to create these digital maps that they want to share with law enforcement teams. And we applied for and received a grant. That's the $9,500. So we have a company already lined up that we're going to be using to do the mapping. The theory behind it is that it creates a grid system for the building so that instead of us saying something's happening at the Four Corners or the northwest entrance or whatever, or this way it'll be in a common language for both police and fire that we can say, oh, something's happening in F2 and everybody knows where that is on the map. And so we'll have copies of that here on campus as well as shared with first responders. So the state is encouraging all districts to go through this process, which is why they're providing grant money to do it. We'll be going through that. That should be done hopefully in the next couple months. And that is the end of my business update.
All right. Questions, board members? Mr. Clement? All right. Great job, Kevin. All right, let's go to approval of new hires.
We have no new hires this evening.
All right. All right, and let's go on to approval of resignations.
We do have one resignation, Julie Corbin resigning as a special education teacher at the middle school. And actually, if I could correct it, if you're going to put her date in, she actually corrected me on this. It is actually the 18th, it will be next Tuesday.
18.
Her, the resignation letter, and it indicated that 2 people, she was gonna stay on and onboard them to the 18th. She said 2 people would join in the letter.
We have,
We hired, we didn't hire.
Oh, they're already here.
yeah, they're already here.
And what role were they?
So Mr. Houston was one of the individual, Mr. Houston.
Yeah, Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon.
One of the individuals who was at the village.
Uh,
So he'll be coming up as he's working on his license through CISA. So she was going to support him. And then the other one was
We had a teacher that was on it.
Mr. Grant. Yeah, he was out. That's correct.
Fully certified special ed or
Mr. Grant is, Mr. Houston is not.
He's in a program in
Yeah.
the right place.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the resignation of Julie Corbin?
Dr. Beal, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resignation of Julie Corbin as a middle school special education teacher effective October 18th, 2022.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Daniels Ashley. We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Macon. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor will raise hand and or aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion carries unanimously 7-0 to approve the resignation of Julie Corbin, and we wish her well on her future endeavors. All right, let's move on to area number 3, engage learners. Ms. Ramos, could you take us through our Village Academy update?
Yes. I'm just working to get our uploaded here. All right. I had some tech difficulties back there. Academy is. The Village Academy update for the 22-23 school year. A little background in the 21-22 school year. We decided that we needed specifically a place for students in grade 6 through 8.
Sorry,
Come up.
Erica.
Uh-oh.
Hold on one second. Donna, I can't share my screen. If you can. For Kara, yeah,
Oh, Kara.
yes, sorry. We swapped spots here, so
Are you school district around here?
I am,
Okay.
I am. Surprise. Today I am. No, okay. So, I apologize, Ms. Ramos, one second
Okay.
here.
Didn't have it.
You're just coming now.
Okay. So we needed another environment for students in 6th through 8th grade. And that created a space where they could receive specially designed instruction and environment. Doing a lot. Okay.
Everybody, you know, we do have a handout in our packet.
You don't have a copy.
Oh,
I look my device.
And so within this academy, the student success was measured by their academic success, their social emotional success, and then their personal and social consciousness would be evident in how they interacted with other students in the building. This school year, 5 students were included in the Village Academy. And it was staffed by our CISA, Mr. Houston, teacher. I worked with Mr. Houston and Mr. Young to integrate the students back into their home school. All students had a re-entry meeting with myself, Mr. Young, the parent, and the student. And part of the supports that were put in place for them to be successful were SEL counseling. They all receive a mentor, Strive 365 mentoring, and they do check in, check out with the SEL coach in the building. Thus far, students have been very successful with their check in, check out. And when I see them throughout the building, they are very excited to be there and graciously say hello to me. I did spend lunch times with them when they were at the Village Academy. Currently, my future recommendations would be to eliminate the need for Village Academy, as we have other supports in place that we can wrap around our students. That would include SEL counseling, mediations, classroom community circles, and those supports are alleviating and minimizing behavioral concerns at the middle school level.
oh, okay, are you done?
Yes.
All right, questions?
This concludes my presentation.
All right, questions?
Curious, was there a cost associated with it and what are we saving? If we
Yes,
were-
there is a cost associated with the Village Academy right now, and our savings would be impactful. What would our savings be?
Well, there's rent and then the staffing that was involved over there.
Right, so our lease for
Ms. Ramos,
our agreement with the lease
You gonna go first?
with Pastor Davis at New Life Community Church. almost $3,000 a month for the lease. So we would eliminate the lease. And then we would have the opportunity to bring our teacher, Mr. Houston, back up to the middle school to support our students in the special education realm.
Or is there a cost for early termination of that lease?
We have to give him a 90-day notice for termination of the lease. And the 90 days will begin at the point in which we notify him that we're no longer interested in servicing or utilizing this.
So we'll still have to pay for 3 months then?
That's the way it's set up.
We added that language in the contract. It wasn't initially in
Originally,
the
it was what?
contract.
I guess my question is what changed from the time we went through all of this stuff, coming up with this Village Academy and how it's gonna be staffed and what we're gonna do and going over and meeting, what has happened in the last 6 months that made this that where we don't even need this now? I mean, I guess my thought process is a little bit, I'm not gonna use the word frustrated, but you know, we spent a lot of time talking about why we were doing this, how it was gonna be impactful, what we were gonna do, approving budgets and everything. So what happened in the last 6 months that made this whole thing to all of a sudden now everything is wonderful and we don't need to do this? I mean, because now I'm almost like the point like, well, why did we do it in the first place? If in 6 months, everything changed. That makes no sense to me. I don't get it.
I believe the pandemic played a large part in that students were out of school, and when they came back, they didn't have that sense of being able to regulate back with a larger crowd. They were isolated for a long amount of time. And we had that need last year with the behaviors that were quite challenging in the middle school. And I also believe that to alleviate some of the teacher concerns and the teacher pressures as well.
So the other piece that I'll add to, so correct, in what Ms. Ramos just stated. Last year, there were more kids who were slated for the Village Academy in the middle school. Many of the 8th graders who were part of that population transitioned into high school. And so they're doing fine in terms of being back in the regular education environment. I would also add that our experiences last year were very much attributed to students coming back to school from the pandemic. We have students who came from other school settings who were out of school, a total of, they were virtual for 2 years. We have those students here in our school district. And remember, when we came back from the COVID experience, we transitioned our kids back in. This is our first full year of our kids being back every day for in-person learning. We see our students who are more, in my estimation and observation, and in talking with Mr. Young and Ms. Ramos, our students seem to be more settled this year than they were last year, coming off of a pandemic. In a place where we could not predict what those behaviors would have been like, because we never had to work through a pandemic.
So now where are you putting these students at in the building? Because before I thought there was this whole thing, like we didn't have any space. We didn't have any place to even do it. That was the reason why we were putting them off campus. So now where have we found all of this space at now?
We haven't found any additional space. These students are in the regular classroom setting with their regular education.
So it's fine.
Yeah, I'm just, well, again, initially when we put it together, it wasn't 4 or 5, it was for, I don't remember what I don't remember what the numbers were or whatever. So I just, yeah.
So I thought that a part of our doing this was also to remedy the students that are going to other facilities outside of the district. Who were no longer able to be a part of our total population. What happened to those students?
Initially, yes. So we don't have any students, so that was on the high school side. So right now, we do not have any high school students in the alternative setting right now that I'm aware of. So we don't need it on the high, so that was the initial conversation, yes. And so when we understood what the need was, which was really more in the middle school side, last year, we thought we could take those dollars and create that alternative setting for our middle school students. So that we, as Ms. Ramos said, so we could relieve some of the pressure from what we were saying mostly in the middle school last year. So when we pitched this program, we looked at it as a pilot and as an opportunity for us to figure out what can we do to eliminate and alleviate some of what we are experiencing in the middle school mostly last year. So that was the premise behind why we brought this forward. As school year goes on, could there potentially be a need for some students on the alternative side? Potentially, yes, but right now we do not have.
Are we prepared if we do have any?
We still have the connection with CISA.
Okay. And then also, I think, I'm wondering if we could look at because I personally wasn't clear on the criteria. I know that it was referral, like, you know, you were trying to get through, but if everyone had the same criteria for getting in, we could look and kind of track that that's not happening now. You know, we don't have the data to support, you know, I would like to have some data so that we can look and say, okay, yeah, we didn't need it because, you know, these things did not happen.
And I think that could come through following the students and the students who are now back in the regular education setting, following them and understanding their success.
And I
Been able to report out.
I see that the five in middle school have the support still in place within how many, were we top heavy? How many went to high school? Maybe that's why we were just five left. Was both of them eighth graders?
About half.
Okay,
About half.
so are they getting those support
I would have to follow up on that.
I'd like for
I'm not
us
sure.
to have, you know, kind of a check-in on them, a regular one, just to, if they did make it in and just to still have some supports to follow them.
And not all of them came back to Brown Deer either.
But the ones that did, if we
Yeah.
did say, you know, when you get out, this is what we do for you, to make sure that you remain.
Successful.
Yeah, successful, straight.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes, I was just looking at the slide that talked about the student success in these three primary categories. As we are watching these students throughout this school year, and if they fall off in these categories, is it one category that will potentially cause them to have to go back to the village? Is it two categories? Is it all three categories you would then be looking at? If they're not doing as good as they were to move out of the category or out of the village, how do you determine where they're at and the possibility of them having to move back into the?
When we had the reentry meetings, we didn't make their conditions be the three goals here. We had it more discipline based and ensuring that they would not receive any huge infractions as the ones that enabled them to go there last year. And so we went through those infractions with the parents and with the student there. And I had done that prior to that meeting with the student. And so we discussed the discipline record and what could potentially lead up to going back to Village Academy.
So let me just add this, our goal is restorative conversations with our students. Naturally, we never had this in place for a student to be in the Village Academy for the entire school year. It's only for a set amount of time. And so based off of what Mrs. Ramos reported, we believe that our students have went through the appropriate amount of time to transition back into their environment with their regular peers, which is the best way for students to learn. And so conversations with Mr. Pastor Davis has been very positive in that thought as well. He knows that students weren't going to be in this place for all year. He knew that in our conversations. I just want to note that into the conversation. He's not aware, of course, where we are right now, but he was aware that naturally these students would not be in this place for an entire school year based off of how we wanted to reacclimate them to a regular learning environment and then come back to our school building. Accordingly.
It was something interesting that you said. You said, Ms. Ramos, you said discipline. This was our 6th to 8th graders. I'd be very interested to know, out of those students that were in the Village Academy, how many of them actually did not come back to the district either because they withdrew or they were part of anything that happened this school year as freshmen that they may not be with us now.
We don't have any.
I'd be interested in, I'd be real interested to know how many of,
So it's nice.
how many of those that was involved in and stuff, because then it almost would seem as though this wasn't really more for that. It was more of a discipline thing or whatever to get them off the campus rather than it was for special education. So, all right, any other questions? Relationship to the updates for Village Academy? All right, let's go.
Oh, I guess I do have a question. So when would this be effective? As of when?
We will make contact with Mr. Davis either today or tomorrow, then 3 months out. So you got November, this is October, you got November, December. He may allow us to count October. I don't know since it's early. I don't know. We'll have to have that conversation with them, but we can try to negotiate October, November, December, and then we will.
It should take the date of,
Notification.
you should not have to terminate on the first of the month. So if you're notifying him tomorrow on the 12th, the first month runs from October 12th to November 12th, November 12th to December 12th, and December 12th into January.
But we, as of now, there's nobody there. We'll just be paying for it for 3 months.
That'll be correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other further questions? All right, Mr. Ramos, let's go on to item 3B, social emotional learning update.
Okay, social and emotional learning update. Social and emotional learning is an integral part of education and human development. SEL, as we refer to it, is a process through which all young people increase human development. SEL is a process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. Feel and show empathy for others and establish and maintain supportive relationships. This goes hand in hand with our equity pledge, in which we will walk together each step of the way with our community to make our lives better, to move forward in peace, and to create the best educational system possible. Together we will change that will heal, restore, and achieve justice for all. Felt like we could have done a pledge. The teacher, we have 3 social emotional coaches, 2 at the middle and high and 1 at the elementary. And what they do is very integral to the success of the students in all of our schools. If you see here, they teach self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making. When they co-teach and push into the classroom, we see a lot of what we have in the green, student-centered, a lot of teacher language, a lot of kids taking responsibility for their choice, cooperative learning, enriching classroom discussions, being able to self-assess and self-reflect, have that balanced instruction because we have all these core values and competent building. The 3 signature practices in SEL are a welcoming activity which builds community within the classroom. They engage in strategies such as brain breaks and how to transition correctly. And then they have an optimistic closure, which highlights a shared understanding of the practice that they have done in the classroom. To date, there have been 27 mediations done at the middle school, 24 at the high school. The number of restorative circles that have been done, well, at the middle school, we have not done any restorative circles yet at the high school. Our elementary SEL coach is still in training, and he will need to be trained on our SEL practices. These are some of the MLSS behavior supports that we have in place and that we're working on for this year. Our tier 1 would be our SEL coaches and our Strive 365 partnership. Into tier 2 would be our student support plans in which we would plan a check-in, check-out, a FBA and a BIP and that can be for sped or non-sped. And our tier 3 is moving forward into our community counseling. Some of the next steps that we will be taking, I will be taking a look at how we can spend our mental health grant fund for this year. Our elementary SEL staff member needs CASEL training. I will be working with Josh Delahan to complete our trauma care plan, creating a schedule to push into classrooms for circles. And I also would like to work with the International Institute for Restorative Practices to see if we can start to work on that on our restorative circles. I do want to apprise you of a wonderful email that we received from a teacher last week in which she was struggling with her classroom. She spoke with one of our SEL counselors and they entered into a restorative circle with the class. She said the restorative circle that Ms. Ebony and Mr. Tucker did with the class was incredible. We did a group activity in which students were actively involved with learning the importance of respect toward one another and respect toward our classroom learning environment. Additionally, we did an activity where we got to know one another on a more personal level, discovering various commonalities we hold with one another and recognizing that we have all traveled similar roles. After that circle, she indicated that that day she sent us this email was the ultimate test to determine the effectiveness of that restorative circle. The students came into the class calmly. They sat down in their seats and they were all ready to learn. Throughout the class period, it was evident that the students truly internalized the lessons of the restorative circle that they had on Monday. Our classroom learning environment was calm, filled with respect and great listening. And 2 students even took on the challenge of reminding their friends to show respect while I was teaching. They did so in a manner that was still respectful to their friends, yet encouraged their friends to turn and talk about it. The class asked to do more activities similar to the activities Miss Ebony and Mr. Tucker did with the students on Monday, which we will most certainly do to keep this momentum and positivity moving. She's extremely grateful for the help and support from Miss Ebony and Mr. Tucker. And what we want to see moving forward is more of this in the classroom pushing in. That concludes my presentation.
So if that was that effective for that class, has there been any talk of perhaps implementing the same practice for really all classes and just to set the tone?
I would like to implement that in all classes. In the district that I previously worked at, our SEL coach went into classrooms and pushed in with teachers, and they experienced the same type of results. Our students felt like they were more of a community within that classroom. It was very successful. And I think a teacher has to be vulnerable to allow another person into their classroom. And I think knowing this and this teacher talking amongst her colleagues to let them know, hey, this was a great opportunity for my kids to get to know one another. It starts to reach out to in the classroom that they want to have Miss Ebony and Mr. Tucker come in to do that.
And I can appreciate taking that vulnerability, but if we set it as a standard.
It should be a standard, yes.
I think we should keep in mind, we have 2 people for a massive building, so let's keep that in mind, number 1. And number 2, we do have teachers who have that capacity to already build great relationships with students in their classroom. So I wouldn't suggest that there's a need for it in every classroom, but certainly letting teachers know that if you are having challenges in your classroom, that this is an opportunity for Mr. Tucker and Ms. Oglesby to come in. Last year, they were in separate buildings. So one was middle school, or I'm sorry, Mr. Winston was high school, and Ms. Who did we lose in middle school? We have Mr. Winston, and Mr. Brown last year. And so they were kind of working separately. And this year, Ms. Oglesby and Mr. Tucker are working more as a team, so we can have 1 female and 1 male on the team. But they're doing it 6-12, and that's working really well. So when there's a need, I'm sure we can be responsive to teachers when there's a need, when they want to make themselves vulnerable, when we know they want to make themselves vulnerable. Also with instructional leaders being in the classroom, if they are in a classroom and they see that there appears to be this idea that, you know, relationships are not being built with kids, there isn't community in the classroom, that kind of thing. That certainly is an opportunity for them to go and provide that support as well.
So I guess when I think of it as being a standard versus more a, hey, I need help, that allows the opportunity for more of that vulnerability. So it's not like, oh, I can't control my class, now they gotta come in. But if it's happening for everybody, or on some level with everybody, there may be a better reception to the interaction.
So like Dr. Garrison, so couldn't that two-person team, couldn't they do a PD one day for all of the teachers when we do professional development? Could they do a PD so that anyway they're not going into each and every classroom? But if they're doing a professional development and all of the teachers are hearing it or whatever have you, then potentially there may be something else, another tool to be able to put in their tool belt to be able to utilize when their classes first get started, and or knowing that that resource is actually there for them to be able to use.
Correct. I mean, one of the things that we like about our field calendar is that it is open up and we can slide in an hour presentation, I know a 30-minute presentation, or even a video presentation to our staff as it pertains to some of the SEL conversations. And I think what's more important is that we have the people here and they are pushing in as much as possible. But that definitely can be done in a PL conversation.
All right, and what's that,
Other than pushing in, what are they doing?
Mediations, they're doing mediations.
So their daily schedule, what is their daily schedule?
They do mediations and they do restorative circles, and then they do push-in on classrooms.
So there's structure to it where there's the families that are there. And what type of mediation, are they impromptu mediations or are they?
Some are impromptu and some are revisiting maybe a mediation they had just to check in. They also do the check-in, check-out for the Village Academy students.
And then, just looking at the one with the SEL, I think I would want some data to show, looking at last year or when we weren't putting this effort forward to now, to make sure that did we make a goal to reduce any sort of infractions, or, you know, is there a goal attached to all of this effort with SEL? Where we can, like right here, where you could say, okay, last year, this time before we had 3 in a building, or before, you know, everyone, we did the push in. I think I'd like to see some tracking and data related to this so that we know that this is successful, other than just knowing, okay, this is what we plan for everyone to do. And we have an endorsement from a teacher, but I think I'd like to see something a little bit more structured, and yes, this is working. It might not be, you know, we're not gonna do some bounds, but we can compare and contrast to what's going on now. And then also with the, I would like to know what type of mediation you're doing specifically, just as far as the 4 forms of mediation, but are these totals, are any of them repeat?
No, they're not.
So these are, so,
They're individual students,
but
like,
that you.
they're not repeated. So if we had a mediation,
It's not a kid that comes back in a month that needs mediation. So
they were different children.
Okay, so the ones that do come back, where's that tracking?
They do track all their mediations and their restorative circles, so we
So
do
it's-
keep that record.
So we have that.
Mhm.
Okay.
And when they do the mediations, they're using restorative practices, so they do ask the key questions for the students, and the
Okay.
questions are for what happened. So
Right,
there's 2 sides, right?
Okay,
What were you thinking at the time? What have you thought since? And then to the person maybe who felt affected, what do you think happened when you realized what happened? Or what impact has this had on you, so that the other student can hear that student?
and do we ever
Give them
get
the
into
impact.
the impact of community, like the school and town during that?
Well, usually it's,
Or just
it's,
mediation
yes,
against
the 2 students.
Okay, we got it. All right, well, if I would like to see some data related to, I don't know, 6 months, year long or whatever, are our efforts working so that we know when to.
all right, any other further questions?
I have one quick question. Are you finding that, most of the students that are needing the assistance are people with IEPs, or this just general population?
General population.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You think solely general revenue?
No, it's spread out.
All right. Let's move on to our item C, discussion of early childhood teacher.
Yes, that's still me. And Mr. Griffin, who is on. Our early childhood special education division, which is just one teacher, they qualify students for services. So we currently have 11 students awaiting evaluations, not counting the evaluations that could come up for students that we already have enrolled. So we receive referrals from DPI through Child Find, as well as walk-in referrals. And as a district, we are responsible for evaluating the students. Although they aren't enrolled in our district yet, it is our responsibility to evaluate them. And once they do become eligible for services, they do enroll in our district. However, these evaluations prior to them becoming enrolled, they are very long. They take about 90 days. And usually when they are through Child Find at this early age, they have a higher probability of qualifying for services. So we are in need of an additional early childhood teacher for that.
So are these including our K-4 students that are already in there? Are we talking about birth to 3?
Birth to 3.
And so you're asking for us to be able, okay. I guess my question then is have we had a teacher like this before in the past?
Yes.
Okay, so this isn't for creating a new position. This is just to hire somebody in a previous position that we had.
No.
The second FTE.
This is the second one. So right now we have Ms. Robbins, who's our early childhood teacher,
Adding one
who was
to the-
servicing our students, doing
So-
evaluations and services.
So you're adding a second teacher. All right. Now, with this being said, okay, so we've got 11. So, but this second teacher just handle those 11? Or they're gonna continue to work with this other instructor to do what else?
To work together.
Okay. And I guess my next question then is, Kevin, I mean, what's the dollar amount that we're talking about?
We'll be posting for the position. Special education staff are difficult to find, early childhood even more so. It's a more unique license, but we'll go in and look at, the challenging part for us financially is that, again, students they're in the queue, but they aren't counted, so they're not part of our revenue limit formula. So we're not going to receive any revenue for them. So we're going to have to absorb this out of, what we're currently doing. So we'll have to take a look and see. I'm still going through the process of putting in all the staffing changes that have happened in the last month or so, just to finalize benefits and things like that. So I'll be able to give you a better sense of how some of that will offset some of that cost, but we probably won't save as much as I'd hoped overall with adding another FTE.
All right, and so that would come out of the pupil services budget?
It's staffing.
Of course, I'm still saying staffing, but it's added to the pupil services budget overall, correct?
We don't isolate it that way. I mean, any special education teacher is it's part of staffing. I mean, I guess technically it's pupil services, but pupil services is more dealt with specific contracted services or expenses tied to that. The staffing is basically addressed by need. So we go through that. So.
Okay. All right, this was speaking.
I was just wondering why there's such a large spread between, I know that you're saying that you don't really know what you're going to quote unquote find based on their educational and whatever else we look for when determining the salary. There's such a huge spread. If you look at the motion, 39,000, not to exceed 76,000. Am I looking at the right one?
That's the next.
That is a different
That's a
one.
different agenda.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we don't have a specific amount because it'll be dependent on what salary range we need when we see what the applicants are, and then whether they make benefits or not will be part of the cost. We'll plan for the highest cost and hopefully coming under that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It's also important to note that when we're servicing, what we're seeing at this point in time, in terms of servicing the students and their needs, the needs are expanding. So when we think about this population, the population of students, 3-year-olds, even some 4-year-olds, we are knowing and learning and understanding the behaviors that they're coming with. It's far exceeds what we've seen historically as it relates to students this young. We're seeing many students, more students who are on the autism spectrum. And so those needs are varying. And I also see this as a retention issue with the teacher who is currently servicing students she's evaluating students students who are in the queue. She's also servicing the students who are in the queue. And then we also have students who are still coming through Child Find. And so part of this is a retention effort to keep her. It would be more than a challenge to find two early childhood teachers to service our students. You're welcome.
Board members, any other questions in relationship to this? All right, someone would like to make a motion?
Certainly, Dr. Vito, I'd like to make a motion to approve the hiring of an early childhood special education teacher for the 2022-2023 school year.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Motion made and second. Any other conversation? I guess my only piece of this other part of this conversation is, are we talking about this is going to be one of those positions that we're going to continue year after year after year, or is this just for this year? This year.
Bless you.
And you have to watch the case.
I think it's important for us to assess it this year, see what, by the time we get to May or June, what that brings for 22-23 school year.
All right, any other further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor will raise hand and or aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion carries unanimously 7-0. So Ms. Ramos, you are eligible to go ahead and find an early childhood special education teacher.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on to our next item, item 3D, discussion and approval of Elevate K-12 programs.
So Dr. Peter and members of the board, tonight we are requesting approval to partner with Elevate K-12 programs. Elevate provides licensed teachers with an online platform in real time. It is noted that there's a teacher shortage, not just in Wisconsin, but also in the nation. As it stands, Sona Research supports over 840,000 teachers will need to be replaced over the next few years. You do the simple math around that, that means 16,800 teachers right here in the state of Wisconsin will need to be replaced. I can be honest with you, we are not in a place in Wisconsin where we're replacing 16,800 teachers. With that being said, in Brown Deer, we had a chemistry teacher that resigned a few days before the start of the school year. Timing of the departure was very difficult for us to find someone to replace. With that being said, there are 6 sections of classes that we would use the Elevate real-time teacher platform for. I say 6 classes, there are 6 sections of classes that we use Elevate programming for. With that being said, the Elevate programming is also centered around Wisconsin state standards. And the 2 classes in which we would use, or the classes that we would need this help in will be in chemistry and a physical science classroom. Again, the timing wasn't the best. We did do our best to try to find a teacher, but we have not been able to solidify a candidate for this position. We even looked out of state for the possibility of finding a real-time in-person teacher that we weren't able to land this school year. With that being said, Mrs. Brown and myself have had conversations with Elevate, and they are partners with other school districts in the state of Wisconsin to provide, again, online licensed teachers that will pretty much be broadcast in the classroom with our students. There will be a teacher of record in the classroom. I say a teacher of record. This could be a para and or a regular substitute teacher in the classroom that will always have to be in the classroom with our students while they're on the K-12 platform. I'm sorry, and the physical science platform. With that being said, we know that there's going to be challenges with online learning, but we do believe as it stands right now, this is one of our better options to service our students who are in chemistry in our physical science classrooms. That same teacher also was not to bring up a different conversation because we're focused on Elevate, but that same teacher also taught other classes in which we've had to use outside sources to help those students get online learning as well. With that being said, the cost of this program is a little, the cost of this program is the cost of this program for us to use Elevate for the first semester is $39,852. That will cover all 6 periods every day of the week. So that'll allow us to get through the first semester. Our goal is to still be looking for a chemistry teacher in real time to come back to our school district starting in the second semester in January. If we do not solidify a chemistry teacher halfway through the school year, then this cost would go to $76,752 for the entire school year. Okay, but that will again provide us with a real-time teacher who's certified to teach chemistry and the Wisconsin state standards in chemistry and of course our physical science class. And so in a nutshell, this is I hate to say a stopgap for us, but this is a need that we have in this situation that we kind of had to stumble into. Now, we know that in the pandemic learning, not just in pandemic, but the pandemic years that we've been experiencing, this could be a new norm in some districts. This could be a new way of learning in some places as well. We have to be realistic with that idea. Again, with the numbers of retiring teachers continue escalating and our population not replenishing itself, there's going to be a need for us to look at different opportunities in our school system. With that being said, I believe that kind of captures in a nutshell kind of what we're requesting for today. Mrs. Brown is online and I'll turn it over to her just to share, see if she has any additional things she would like to share. Mrs. Brown.
Good evening, board. Actually, you covered most of the points fairly well. Unless the board has questions for me, you pretty much stated everything.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. That definitely concludes my short presentation as it pertains to our need for a chemistry teacher for our students for the 2022-2023 school year.
Board members, questions?
So then is this the teacher on screen, looking at the students, interacting with them?
Yes, the Elevate K-12 program and did do a brief presentation with us to show how that actually looks. Teachers are, as lively as they can be on screen, not being in the classroom. Teaching chemistry is not the easiest thing to do, but we do have the appropriate resources that Elevate will also send to us, along with what we currently have here in our own school district. Again, there's going to be challenges naturally to this, but we will have a teacher on record to teach chemistry so that our students can get that credit for that classroom.
What is happening right now?
Right now we have
chemistry as my son is one of them.
Right now, we have a substitute in the classroom that is being assisted by another teacher to help get some of that learning. But this is our way of making sure that we have chemistry taken care of for the whole entire year.
Are there any tech costs that we need to do it? Like, is it a big screen? Are they all on those screens?
So right now, Elevate will be able to either Skype into the classroom. They will send us their technology needs, or not technology. They'll send us the technology that we can install in our own classroom. But for the most part, our online platform will be able to help us with students being one-to-one in the classroom. We'll also be able to project in the classroom if needed.
And also, will the teacher on record will be in each class every day as far as monitoring?
We have to have someone in the classroom to support technology needs if needed. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, so this is going to be a 2-year program that we're signing up for?
So this will be a 1-year program that we're signing up for. The way that this has been drawn up is this is a year, up to a year possibility. If we solidify a teacher of record, excuse me. Need some more. If we do solidify a teacher of record prior to January the 9th, So I wrote that in wrote that into the contract. We'll pay that $39,852 and we'll be done with Elevate K-12 program. If we do not solidify a teacher before January 9th, which is 2 weeks prior to the start of the second semester, then we will have to continue with them. Naturally, we'll have to because we want a teacher of record for the whole year for our teachers. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
How are we going to 2024?
There's my question.
So right now, the motion
Should that have been 2023?
It's 23.
it'd be to the end of 2023.
Okay, all right, because I had, what she was saying, and I wanted to ask the same question. I was like, well, why are we doing a 2-year contract with them if we can turn around and get out of it January 9th? I don't see any business around doing a 2-year contract and letting you get out of it in 3 months.
It should be.
Should be 2022, 2023. Yes,
Okay.
okay, thank you. That's where I was getting to.
One other question regarding staffing. Who are you all thinking you're gonna staff in there that's gonna be in there daily? Because, you know, we're not really bringing anybody in at 76, so that's like one teaching position that's coming in. Say it's gonna be all year at 76. Do you already have this person that's gonna be in there, stay there? Because that's like, if they're certificated, that's like having 2 teachers and the one teacher. What are you all thinking of doing? Just a pair, not just having a pair? And I mean, because I'm wondering about us spending 2 teacher salaries and 1 teacher would not be teaching, but that's what it's sounding like.
So great question, Board Member Smith. One of the things that we've tried to do is we will utilize our building sub that we currently have, Mr. Kareem. That is not our goal to keep him in that position the entire time. And so there may be a need for additional person to be in the classroom and be that person of record. But right now, as it stands, we can use Mr. Perrine, sorry, as our
Long-term.
long-term person to start this conversation off within our buildings. We do have paras that can always come in the classroom, so if needed, as needed. But as it stands, we would use Mrs. Perrine. And there may be an additional conversation or need to have someone to be in the classroom during this time.
Right, just for continuity's sake, I would like for the students to have a dedicated person that will, you know, it's not just who's gonna cover this class, you know. Just that, you know, they're seeing the same person that we'll call them a proctor, that's gonna proctor that classroom. Just for continuity, just for continuity's sake, they go in, they see that same person, even though that person is not the instructor.
We did have that conversation, Mrs. Brown and I, the principal, in detail about making sure that this is get off to a strong start. We do believe that Mr. Perrine can assist us in that, get us off to a strong start. And then naturally, if we have to come back to the board for an additional support person in this conversation, we can actually do that. Now, as it stands, I believe Mrs. Brown does have a EA position that has not been filled, that we could still go look into getting in this conversation, but we wanted to start off this way and then move into that conversation.
And that one that's not been filled is not otherwise needed, is that why we didn't fill?
Well,
fill it?
this the vacancies.
No, I'm just saying, say we, you know, this creates a hole, so like, would she need 2 people, because she still want that first support person?
So great question.
That's $100,000 class.
Great question. But our kids are worth way more, right? So we currently have a building sub,
Right.
Mr. Perrine, that could actually come fill into this position. We also have an open spot for an EA that we can need to still fill. That's on the books already that we need to fill. We fill that position with someone, then this person could be the proctor, as you mentioned, in this chemistry class. That will allow Mr. Perrine to still do his regular duties, which is subbing for the whole building.
Right, no, I understand that, but removing that one that's open, does Mrs. Brown would she still need
Need
that?
someone else. I don't think she'll be someone else.
Okay,
But let Ms. Brown say.
Where is she at?
She'll be another person all the time.
All right, any other questions? All right, someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Elevate K-12 programs in the amount of $39,852 and not to exceed $76,752 for the 2022-23 school years as presented.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Macon. Motion has been made and second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor will raise hand and or aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion carries unanimously 7-0. All right. Let's go on now to our next item, which is item number 4, engage in innovative staff, community safety tools. And who would that be?
Yes, that would be, tonight we have, Ms. Courtney Krieger with us, our communication specialist. And the idea behind this, particular agenda item is just I asked for me to come and just provide, information to the entire community regarding communication tools that we do have, in the district. I know we've heard, one of our community or parents / community members, came and presented, a couple weeks ago and talked about, for example, parents stating that they're not receiving emails, for example. Courtney's going to talk about that a little bit. Parents have the liberty in our student information system to uncheck the box, to not receive information. So I just want us all to know how these different tools work, what we have, number one, the purpose behind the tools, and then how the tools work. This is just a broad stroke overview, but I just think it's important for everyone to know the various communication tools that we do have in our district. So Courtney, are you there?
I am here, but I am having issues sharing my screen.
Okay, we'll make you a host.
Oh, got it.
It is.
She is a host.
So. There you are.
Is everybody able to see that?
We are.
Okay, wonderful. Yep. So as Dr. Brown said, I just wanted to give an overview of the different modes of communications that we currently have in the district. We did last year and this year add a few more different ways of communicating. So I want to go over just very briefly. Last year, we did implement a district-wide internal and external newsletter using SMORE. And that is used not only at the district level, but also in all 3 buildings. And so the thought behind this was so that we have some consistency in what the parents are seeing, so that the layouts are very similar and they kind of have an idea of where to get their information. Of course, board meetings in Schuyler, which is our mass communication, we did implement texting last spring. And for families and for staff to get texting, they do have to opt in. So it's not based on your Skyward information. It is something that families have to choose to do. We do put that texting, how to sign up for texting in all of our newsletters at the district level. We also have, of course, a voice email, the voice and email. Our website, we are working on updating our website to make sure that all of our information is up to date and right front and center where our families need that information the most. We do have our social media page, which is pages which have been growing steadily over the past several years. Last year, we did introduce Instagram, which has, I think, brought a lot of student engagement, which was really nice to see. We do have PeachJar, but I am trying to do my best to reintroduce PeachJar. I'm not sure that it is used as much at the middle and high schools. So I have been trying to reintroduce families to PeachJar to let them know that is a mode of communication at all 3 schools. This year, we implemented the school messenger app. And this app is for staff and for families, and it allows you to view all of your communications all in one location. And it's really cool. I've heard a lot of great things about it from staff and families who have downloaded it. And then you get to decide how you want to receive your communication. So for instance, if I want to go into like a crisis information, when we did have that lockdown, staff and families that had it on there, they got an instant notification. And so they got it right on their phone. They didn't have to wait to check their email. And then coming soon on that device, I believe we're trying to figure out a way so that families can report their students' attendance. And then lastly, we have had the Skyward app for a few years now, but what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that families understand everything that they can do. So they can check their students' grades, attendance, any behavior issues, and that they can update their own information through that Skyward app. And then they can also have a two-way way of communication with their teachers. When we talk about modes of communication during crisis communication, I do want to mention that the text messaging and email and voice is always our modes of communication. We try not to text families unless it is very important. Then of course that school messenger app is a great way to stay up to date immediately if something is happening. And then I just wanted to provide a few friendly reminders. Some modes of communication, and I put them in blue, are based on an opt-in option. And so they will not automatically receive those communications unless the family signs up. I also want to remind families to check your contact information in Skyward. If we do not have an up-to-date phone number or email, then they will not receive those communications. And then if a family has unsubscribed or blocked the district's emails, or you're not sure why you're not receiving emails, then I just really encourage you to come to email me, and we can kind of get that sorted with our IT. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions?
Board members.
I have two quick questions. One question is, do you have a certain number of people who have identified or contacted you to say that they weren't getting communication, just out of curiosity? That's one question.
Yeah, I think from time to time we do hear that families are not getting those communications. And what's nice, we don't hear it all the time, but when we do, we're able to work with IT to fix any issue. Sometimes they accidentally unsubscribed and we're able to correct that.
And then I think the second thing is if there is a big problem where there's a number of people who are indicating that they're not getting information, I think it's great that you have all of these different ways that they should be getting information, but perhaps it might be nice to send a memo to the parents through the children. I know that's paper and it costs and all of that, just to say what their preference would be, because I heard that you indicated that you try not to use text messaging, but a lot of these young folks, that's the only way they don't even answer phones. They only listen, they only look for text messages. Yeah. So it would be interesting to me or I don't know, I think it would be good to find out what's the preference for most parents.
I do think that, oh, sorry.
Another thing too, Courtney, for me, I'm kind of wondering, like, especially in the crisis part or whatever, why are we letting people be able to unsubscribe rather than that just being like, that's not an option and stuff? Because ultimately what you'd want to be able to do is, if there's a crisis, you want everybody to know. And I do believe that sometimes some of the individuals that say, well, I didn't hear anything about, maybe those individuals that opted out of getting the daily, if there's some type of thing going on. So why are we giving them the option to unsubscribe, number one, and number two, I would think if it's an emergency, it should go email and text message and everything. Or whatever. So then that way we can always tell our public that, you look, there was an issue at the school. We sent you an email, we sent you a text message, we let you know you knew real time, so there is no confusion, regardless whether you opted out or whatever. You know what I mean? I think that we probably, and I don't know if there's a reason why we had it where people could unsubscribe to it unless, you know, there's students that graduated and then, you know, they're like, hey, stop sending me stuff, but, you know, why are we, Courtney, why are we giving them that option?
So unfortunately, they have the option on their own to unsubscribe through their email. It's not something that we allow them. They're just able to do it through their email. I
Isn't that
can
the
look
part that's
into,
down on the bottom that said, if you don't want to get this anymore, like normal emails, this is something that you don't want to do, you can just hit unsubscribe. What if we took that part off of the email itself to where they don't have that option?
I can work with School Messenger and see if that is an option. As far as I know right now, we don't have that option, but I can definitely look in to see. And some families are not receiving it. I mean, yes, I did look today and there were quite a few people that did unsubscribe, families, but there were some that also had invalid email addresses and phone numbers as well. So it's not our only concern. I think I definitely can look and talk with School Messenger and see what we can do. And maybe it's finding a phone number and giving them a call to see if the family is willing to resubscribe.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it may be where it needs to be two different mailing lists. So I may not want to get everyday emails about something, but that doesn't necessarily mean I don't want emergency emails.
I believe oh, sorry, go ahead.
You don't have manpower.
I do believe in Skyward, there is an option that families can do, and they can choose the kind of emails they want. I will look into that too, and I do think it's a good idea to maybe do some sort of survey where families, we can ask them how they do want to be communicated and how often.
Okay, and then something else that has been mentioned already and that I wanted to comment on after your statement with the text messaging. Like I subscribe to the text messages and I've gotten one since we implemented the system. So it very well just could be underutilized.
Courtney, I have a question about the one that you said was for attendance, and are you gonna send, are you sending that little graphic to, did you already send that out to parents?
Yeah, we can put in the newsletters.
Yep, absolutely.
But which one of them did you say was for parents could select to do attendance on?
Courtney, I can answer that. So,
Okay.
So we are looking at Safe Arrival, which is an integration with School Messenger. And Safe Arrival, what it does is it works within the Messenger app that allows parents to report student absences. So there's not a need to call the attendance line. The parents still have that option, but it goes to a different number. And then there's a touch tone system. So like through this or through voice, and a parent pin then that allows them to report an absence. And what that does is behind the scenes, it will sync with our Skyward attendance and then prevent those, the need for an attendance assistant to call to say, well, you've missed, or so if I've missed and then Dr. Garrison's my parent, I'm gone like the period after lunch, and then Dr. Garrison as my parent will get a message and saying, hey, Kara was gone third period. And you say, oh, I'm sorry, it's like excused, is that a doctor, so on and so forth. So it allows for that, and it should save a lot of labor on our offices. It's an ecosystem.
As it is now, if people are, it's in the evening, you find out that they missed the period.
Right, and we're still working through some of the nuances so that it'll be, our parents currently get 2 calls a day. So they get one, I believe, after 10 a.m. and they get another one at 5 p.m.
And then just really, as you all are tweaking these, if you have more than one child in the district, what we get is some child missed these periods. It won't say,
And this will be specific
So
because
we-
it'll be tied to the student Skyward ID, and then you as a parent or as family one, you know, will look at those.
oh, was late
attendance
to class. So
information.
in my mind, I thought, who probably got class? Yeah, it's, one of your children was late to this period, and this period. And I know, so we could we could identify which child, you know, because you don't know if one.
I
ran
think
or-
it should be, it is rather slick. So I think in what our goals there is, you know, to work, to make sure that just those ecosystems that we have, that we're developing systems, that everything just works together. So, so whether it's the messaging that goes out to families, but making sure then that the data and the information that we have in Skyward is accurate and up to date. And, and then how all of that works together.
Because then you have to call, and then the person that answers the phone has to look
And it should negate that.
to see if that person ran off.
And you should be able to look at it. So our goal for that is, I think we have our onboarding at the end of the month, so our goal was November 1st. So it should be close, but there's part of that messaging that will come out. And that's where Courtney and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about the communication will need to go out.
All right, any other further questions? All right, thank you very much, Ms. Krieger, for that presentation. And I guess the other last piece of that is that do all board members receive everything? Because I don't get it. I don't get it. Courtney, I think if you could add board members to some of this, the crisis stuff and everything else. Now, of course, I don't want to know about every kid that's late and everything else like that. You know, but the crisis pieces and some of those other things or whatever, have you, could you ensure?
I did.
I don't get it.
I don't get my mom even gets that.
I did add everybody to the mailing list for crisis communication, all the board members. So you should have received 3 communications during our last lockdown.
It may be in your spam folder.
You know what? Where is it coming via text or via email?
It came in my
it-
email.
I did get the email.
I got the email.
Yeah,
All right.
I get the email.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you would only get the text messages if you opt in for the texting.
Oh, well, I like to opt in for text.
It's only been one so far, so.
There should have been 3. So I can look into that too if the text messages are inconsistent. That's something we can look into.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, because a lot of people have multiple emails that are going on and stuff. So, yeah. All right. Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. All right. So now let's go on to our item 5, our motion and roll call. Go into closed session. So would someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion and to enter into closed session to consider strategy for crime detection and prevention pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.5, 19.85, 1D.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. Motion has been made. Second?
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Macon. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? We'll go to roll call. Hearing and seeing none. All right, Ms. Daniels Ashley.
Vito,
Aye.
Daniels Ashley, aye. Macon,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Robinson, aye. Smith,
Aye.
Walker, aye. Vote is unanimous and it is
7:33.
7:33.
All right, so we will go now move into closed session at 7:33. Is there anything that we'll be voting on and where we'll need to come back into open?
Yes.
All right. So for those of you that would like to be able to stay on, you can after we come back in from out of closed session and come back into session. I mean, we still not letting, just in case. All right. All right, thank you. Now we're getting ready to go into closed session. Welcome back, everybody. Are we back? Okay, all right, welcome back to the school district of Brown Deer's board meeting, October 11th, 2022. Now we're back into open session. All right. There's no motion in here though.
No, seven is to adjourn.
All right, would someone like to make a motion? Do you know how we should read this one? How you should read it?
Make a motion to approve.
Yeah.
the safety.
Make a motion to approve the emergency operations and school safety plan as presented.
For 2020,
For the
22, 23.
2022-2023 school year.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Robinson, the motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Dr. Vito, I will second.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? I just think that it is a very comprehensive plan, what we're looking at, and I think that we should be good to go. All right, so
Good job.
with that being said, all in favor with raised hand and or aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion carries unanimously 7-0 to approve the emergency plan for the 2022-2023 school year. All right. Now, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right, thank you very much. The motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Motion has been made by Ms. Smith, second by Ms. Walker. All in favor with raised hand and or aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, motion carries unanimously 7-0 for adjournment, and we call this meeting adjourned at 8:06 p.m. Everyone enjoy the remainder of your evening and have a wonderful remainder of your week. Thank you very much and good night.
You can't see this tonight, or we won't make the next meeting on the